Well, let's come back over to Mark because you have been travelling to do some journalism, and you've had a trip here to the Texas Legislature. So tell us about where you've been and what you've encountered.
This past Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I attended the day after the opening day of the 88th Texas Legislature and spent 3 days there. I'm shown here with Steve Toth, a representative, a state congressman, and Wyatt Watson, whose hat says "Make Texas a Country Again." And Wyatt is with Texas Lives Matter, and he's there, and I'm there to kind of chronicle things. He's there to talk to these legislators about the lack of border security, and I've got some narrative here to share. Um, Representative Toth, he's shown in this just seen photo with yours truly and Wyatt Watson, generally agreed that Governor Abbott's invasion declaration invoking the pertinent parts of both the U.S. and Texas constitutions lacks enforcement and that the ball is in Abbott's court, so to speak. However, Representative Toth seemed to distance himself from overly harsh criticism of Abbott's failings by noting that the federal government is chiefly responsible for the border, which technically is true. Yet Toth added that the state government will carry out security actions, such as securing metal fencing reinforced with concertina and barbed wire in high intensity invasion areas, only to find that federal Border Patrol agents will come along and oftentimes undo whatever security measures the state carried out. In this case, unlocking the fence gate that the state National Guard just got done locking. So, Representative Toth says the federal government does not simply fail to do its duty regarding securing the border. The federal government also actively tries to undermine whatever actions Texas carries out. Toth also stressed that all the laws needed for border defense already are on the books, and passing new border laws is largely, if not completely, unnecessary. That was one of Representative Toth's chief um, answers to our query. And he's very much in favor of border security, but there's this wavering on whether to call Governor Abbott out for what other critics are saying, way beyond Wyatt and myself, for what other critics are saying. And I've reported this before on UK Column, is Abbott's actual abdication of responsibility. Many using the word betrayal, some even using the word, treason. And this is, ranch hands and ranch owners who live along the border. It's some county sheriffs. It's produce growers who grow crops along the border. They're the ones using the words like betrayal and treason, things like that. And there's also something important that Toth was reminded of here, and I'll share this next. Toth was told about this Fox report, and I had this on UK Column last week. If he, Governor Abbott, acknowledges that there's an invasion occurring, the Constitution has plenty of provisions that not only the federal government has a duty, but the states, the governor of each state, has a duty to repel any invasion that occurs. And that's a quote originally from Kinney County Attorney Brent Smith. And we shared that with Representative Toth. And we also reminded Representative Toth of this. The next step is fulfilling the duty as the governor to repel it. And that's another statement by Kinney County Attorney Smith. And then we reminded Toth that former Department of Homeland Security official under Trump, Ken Cuccinelli, said that Governor Abbott should boat immigrants or move them by boat who cross into the U.S. illegally and boat them back to Mexico. So we laid this all on Representative Toth's lap. And again, he agreed with much of the severity that we were sharing with him about the border, but he stopped a little bit short of coming down real heavily on Governor Abbott, perhaps due to political pressure ideas. But the guy I was with, Wyatt, is very persistent. And I'll show Wyatt now making his rounds here in this next photo. He's talking to two DPS state troopers, and these state troopers are among several we talked to during this trip who have spent time at the border, and they've done their rotation working the southern border with Mexico. And when Wyatt and I shared the things that I've learned as a reporter and that Wyatt has learned in a more direct fashion. When we shared these things about the border, these DPS officers, at least the two shown there in that photo, they opened up and said that much of what we're saying is true, and the situation is very severe. And to a large extent, they wish the Governor Abbott would, regardless of what the federal government does, but especially if the federal government is inactive or hostile toward this, they wish the state government would step in and repel the invasion. They would like to do so, but their hands are tied. They told us that firsthand. And I've got some other pictures just to share of the visit there. The next picture is the House of Representatives, pretty sizable. Again, it's the largest Capitol building in the U.S. of all the states except for the U.S. Capitol. That's the House in action on this past Tuesday. And thumbing through the next photo, uh, this is sort of a side issue, but it has some pertinence to the border. There was a large contingent of people wearing these red shirts, ban Democrat chairs, and Texas has an odd tradition in the legislature on the House side where the House Speaker, Dade Phelan, D-A-D-E, that's Dade Phelan, P-H-E-L-A-N, he is following this weird tradition, even though he's a Republican, of having the chairman of most or all of the key committees chaired by Democrats. And so many people concerned about the border and many other issues were there to say ban Democrat chairs. They don't like this practice, this so-called tradition. They want it changed because they believe it's harming the machinery of government and constructive things are not getting done. And I have some other pictures to share real briefly. This is the Senate floor in the next frame, and the man sticking his arm out to his right, talking to the lady in the red scarf, is Senator Bob Hall. He is another key legislator rather that we visited, and we spent considerable time with Mr. Hall as well as Mr. Toth, the state rep I showed earlier. And if you move on to the next frame, this is Wyatt Watson again of Texas Lives Matter talking to one of Mr. Hall's staffers. And as we killed time there talking with that staffer, Senator Hall showed up and he showed us this resolution or this proposed bill rather. And we're seeing a screenshot of it. This is Senate Bill number 237. And the main thing that Senator Hall shared with us was that he feels that an interstate compact is needed. So Texas would need to get into a compact with at least one other state, and that's all it would need is Texas plus one. Any more states would be icing on the cake, but just one other state is needed. Oklahoma looks like a prospect, Senator Hall said. Florida looks like another prospect to form this compact. And Wyatt and I and others have been examining that compact, and one of the things that's in there is that it requires the approval of the U.S. Congress. And the people I've been talking to so far as I've been following these border issues for UK Column understand that in Article 1, technically, Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, when states enter into compacts that they, with foreign nations or with one another, that it does require technically the consent of Congress. However, there are some caveats when there are imminent dangers like invasions that take place. So constitutional interpretation comes to the fore, and the way the Constitution is interpreted in that regard, would congressional approval really be needed when there's an invasion? In other words, the compact is not just some economic compact, is an open question. So this SB number 237, we just got it, we're circulating it, and we're getting a lot of opinions on it. The language is a little vague and ambiguous. There's the question of congressional approval that I just mentioned. Critics believe that'll slow the machinery of responding to the border crisis down and slow it down too much. So next week, I hope to have a much more in-depth opinion on SB 237 and Article 1 of the Constitution on whether congressional approval is indeed needed, and to answer some other questions regarding this bill. Do you guys have any questions or counterpoint?
Well, I just come back and say, Mark, thank you very much for giving us that update. And it's really excellent that you're able to get out and about to speak to people. And we're going to work to develop this. But my attention was caught by you saying, well, one of the security detail. One of the security detail locks the gate, and along comes another one and unlocks it. And of course, it's a simple thing, but if it's true, and I absolutely believe what you're telling me, this is a sign of a country that can't stand, because we've now got madness unleashing itself in the United States. We can't go into it now because we're right at the end of the news. But yes, we look forward to you coming back to us on this subject, and we'll certainly do more.
Okay, David, we're going to end on this one then, and you've got a meme for us.
Yes, we've got the elephant in the room, which is marked COVID, vaccine injuries and deaths, and he's squeezing up against two people marked BBC and UK government. The BBC is saying, well, ignore him, maybe he'll go away. And the UK government is saying, ignore who?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Very good.
Okay. Well, we're absolutely out of time, and it's a shame, because there's a lot more that we could be discussing around all the key segments of the news today, but I think we should end there. We're going to say a big thank you to our audience, and of course a very big thank you to all of our supporters, because we can only do what we do with your financial help. And have we got a video to end on, Mike?
Well, look, we're pretty much at it. Let's keep it for extra.
Okay, we'll save that for extra. So if you're a signed up member, join us for extra in a few moments, and we'll pack in some more information. Yeah. We'll leave it there. We'll say bye-bye for today.
Bye-bye.